The Galactic Council chamber fell silent. Across the massive amphitheater, representatives from 100 star systems exchanged uneasy glances. The holographic display at the center of the room flickered, showing something they had never expected to see: warships, human warships, tearing through Dominion fleets like they were nothing more than drifting scrap. The transmission came from the outermost fringes of Dominion-controlled space, where an invasion force, one of their largest, had descended upon an unremarkable blue-green world. Earth. It was supposed to be a swift campaign, a show of dominance. The Council had dismissed humanity as an emerging species, technologically primitive, politically fragmented. No one had expected them to fight back, let alone win. Yet here they were, watching in stunned silence as a Terran battle group, smaller in number, outgunned in every way, dismantled an armada 3 times its size. The Dominion fleet had come with the arrogance of conquerors. Now, they were fleeing like prey. A Excelvar ambassador, his scaled hands tightening into fists, broke the silence. This cannot be real. The Dominion's fleets are the strongest in the quadrant. His voice slithered through the chamber, tinged with barely controlled rage. You mean to tell me the humans repelled them? The footage answered for him. A swarm of Dominion warships, sleek and menacing, had surrounded Earth's orbital defenses. The standard tactic: overwhelm the enemy, strike fast, and leave nothing behind but compliance or ruin. But something had gone wrong. The human fleet had not followed the script. Instead of retreating, they had countered, not with brute force, but with precision. While Dominion ships relied on centralized AI to coordinate their assault, the human commanders had something else: instinct. The ability to read the chaos of battle and turn it to their advantage. With calculated strikes, they severed the Dominion's formation, targeting command ships and supply nodes, disrupting their carefully laid battle plan. And then, the real nightmare began. From the depths of Earth's orbital platforms came weapons no one had ever seen before: kinetic slugs moving at relativistic speeds, ripping through shields like they weren't even there. Drone swarms that adapted mid-battle, shifting tactics faster than any Dominion AI could predict. And ships, human ships, taking damage that should have left them drifting hulks, only to fight harder. The Council's finest tacticians had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. They had seen countless species rise and fall. But they had never seen this. What are they? Another ambassador muttered, watching as the human fleet encircled the retreating Dominion forces. A transmission had been intercepted, an open broadcast from one of Earth's ships, one that played now across the chamber. A human voice, firm and unwavering, cut through the static. You came to our world expecting an easy conquest. You thought we would kneel, that we would break. But you made one fatal mistake. A pause. You underestimated us. The message ended, but its impact lingered. The council chamber felt heavier, as if the very air had thickened with uncertainty. The Dominion had never faced a species like humanity before. Civilizations that encountered the Dominion had 2 choices: submit or be erased. Humanity had chosen neither. They had chosen to fight. And worse, they were winning. A soft chime echoed in the hall, signaling an incoming report. A Sithar delegate, his bioluminescent skin pulsing erratically, checked his personal interface. His already pale features turned nearly translucent. The Dominion forces in the Helios expanse. He swallowed hard. They've gone dark. The council erupted in murmurs. That fleet had been the Dominion's reinforcement wave. A second strike force meant to crush whatever resistance humanity had left. Another feed activated on the central display, grainy, but clear enough to send chills down the spines of every diplomat in the room. It showed the remains of a Dominion fleet, debris scattered across the void. And in the distance, sleek human vessels moved methodically through the wreckage, not as scavengers, but as hunters. Someone finally voiced what they were all thinking. This isn't just survival. A Falerian emissary, feline eyes narrowing. They're pushing back. The implications were staggering. If humanity had the strength to resist, to strike, then the balance of power in the galaxy was no longer stable. The Dominion had ruled with unchallenged might for centuries. If humans had found a way to crack their fleets, to outmaneuver them in battle, then every species watching from the sidelines would start to question their place in the hierarchy. The Galactic Council had gathered here today expecting to discuss the aftermath of Earth's subjugation. Instead, they were witnessing the birth of a new power, one that didn't play by their rules. And for the first time in recorded history, the invincible Dominion was bleeding. The silence stretched on, heavy with unspoken fears. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were winning, and the galaxy was not ready. The Dominion had always been relentless, but it had also been predictable. For centuries, it had expanded the same way: send a fleet, overwhelm resistance, absorb or annihilate. Every species before humanity had fallen in line. There had never been an exception. Until now. The fleet sent to Earth had been the vanguard of something far worse. If history held true, Dominion reinforcements would have been en route, not just to finish the invasion, but to make an example of humanity, to burn every city, erase every trace of defiance, and scatter survivors across penal worlds. That was the fate of those who resisted. But something had gone wrong. Those reinforcements had never arrived. The council chamber remained eerily silent, every representative absorbing the implications. A species that should have been subjugated was now a growing problem. No one had spoken the words yet, but they all felt it. The Dominion had underestimated humanity, and now the cost was becoming clear. Across the room, a single voice finally broke the silence. Ambassador Varric of the Salkari Confederation, a species known for their neutrality, leaned forward, his scaled fingers tapping against the polished stone of his desk. "We need to acknowledge the truth," he said, his voice measured but tense. "The Dominion has suffered its first real defeat in over 2 centuries. A few murmurs of dissent rippled through the chamber, but no one outright denied it. The footage had spoken for itself. Dominion ships burning, Earth still standing. They should not have been able to do this, the Exilvar ambassador growled. Humanity is young. Their technology is inferior. No, Varric interrupted. It isn't. He gestured to the display still hovering in the center of the room. Look at their ships. They lack the elegant design of Dominion vessels, true, but functionally, they are lethal. Heavily armored, redundantly shielded. Engineered not just to fight, but to endure. And then there's their adaptability. His voice dropped slightly, as if he still couldn't believe what he was about to say. We have no counter for it. The truth settled over the chamber like a suffocating weight. Dominion fleets were built on efficiency, interlinked AI-driven formations, ships with energy-based weapons designed for swift, overwhelming engagements. Against any conventional enemy, it was enough. But against humanity, it had failed spectacularly. The problem wasn't just their weapons. It was them. Where Dominion commanders relied on perfect, calculated maneuvers, human captains thrived in chaos. They made split-second decisions no AI could predict. Their crews fought harder under pressure, pushing machines beyond safe limits, adapting faster than any tactical system could process. And their strategy? It wasn't conquest or survival alone. It was something else entirely. It was defiance. A cold realization spread through the chamber. If the Dominion had lost its foothold on Earth, it wasn't just a setback. It was a fracture. The Sithar delegate, still reviewing incoming data, suddenly stiffened. His bioluminescent skin flashed in quick pulses alarm. "There's more," he whispered. "It's not just the Helios expanse." The display shifted again. New reports. More silence. 3 more Dominion fleets had gone dark. Not just repelled. Not just crippled. Gone. This wasn't a single battle. It was something far worse. It was systematic. Across the room, the Exilvar ambassador's fury turned into something else: fear. That is impossible. But it wasn't. Humanity wasn't just defending itself. It was hunting. On the bridge of the Resolute Dawn, Admiral Elias Varon stood with arms crossed, watching the remains of the Dominion fleet drift through the void. The battle had lasted 17 minutes. A new record. His officers worked quickly around him, recalibrating weapon systems, running damage assessments, and coordinating fleet movements. They had done this before, and they would do it again. A transmission crackled to life in his earpiece. "Admiral, we have confirmation." The Horizon Lance just took down the last Dominion straggler at the edge of the system. Varen allowed himself the smallest of nods. "Understood. Prepare to move." This wasn't about Earth anymore. The Dominion had made one fatal assumption: they thought humanity was alone. That Earth was their only battlefield. But humanity had spread quietly, methodically. The outer colonies had grown, hidden from prying eyes. And when the first wave of the invasion came, they hadn't just fought back. They had planned. Now, every Dominion world on the border was within striking distance. Varen turned to his second-in-command, Commander Hale. "Status of the next engagement?" "Naval assets are already in position," she confirmed. "Their defenses are thin, mostly civilian stations. We can take it without much resistance." Varen exhaled slowly. It had come to this. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore. They were taking the war to them. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, a sudden alert flashed across every delegate's personal interface. A priority transmission. Live footage. The image was shaky, taken from a ground-level perspective, some Dominion-controlled world. The skies above it were streaked with fire. The unmistakable silhouette of human warships loomed overhead. Smaller dropships descended, controlled, precise. This wasn't an invasion force. This was liberation. The audio crackled. A new voice. Calm. Steady. Human. To those still under Dominion rule. You are not alone. Help is coming. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouting over one another, reports flooding in from Dominion-controlled sectors. This wasn't a single event. It was happening everywhere. The Dominion, once the most feared power in the galaxy, was no longer the hunter. Humanity was rewriting the rules. And the galaxy was watching. The Dominion's silence did not last long. Within hours, encrypted transmissions flickered across the galactic network, bouncing between strongholds, relayed by ships moving under blackout protocols. The Council's diplomatic channels flooded with desperate inquiries, veiled threats, and, for the first time in history, something close to pleas. Entire sectors were on edge. The Dominion, the unshakable force that had ruled for centuries, was losing control. But humanity knew better than to celebrate. Aboard the Resolute Dawn, Admiral Elias Varen watched as tactical overlays shifted on the main display. The push had been surgical so far: strike hard, vanish before retaliation. The Dominion's fleet coordination was breaking down, their reliance on centralized command working against them. But something wasn't right. There should have been a counterattack by now, a last-ditch show of force. Instead, their enemies were waiting. Varen's gut told him why. The Dominion wasn't retreating. It was changing its approach. He turned to Commander Hale, whose expression mirrored his own unease. "Status of our operatives inside the core worlds?" Hale ran a quick scan through her terminal. "Last check-in was 18 hours ago. Intel suggests movement among high-ranking Dominion warlords. Infighting. They know they're bleeding territory, but they haven't unified under a single response yet." She hesitated before adding, "Sir, there's also chatter about something off." Varen frowned. "Clarify." "Fragments of intercepted messages. They don't just reference human resistance anymore. They mention an anomaly. A force beyond us." She paused, scrolling through the data feed. "One of our deep cover assets in the Sithar Enclave picked up something strange, an emergency Dominion transmission marked with a code we haven't seen before. It predates their empire. A designation tied to ancient precursor ruins. The air on the bridge seemed to tighten. Ancient technology. A wild card. Humanity had built itself up through relentless adaptation, but even they had limits. If the Dominion had found something buried deep in its past, something older than any of them, then the war was about to take a turn no one had anticipated. Varen exhaled. We need confirmation. Send a priority ping to the Aegis initiative. If there's old tech in play, I want our people finding it first. Hale nodded, moving swiftly to relay the orders. Across the fleet, tension rippled through the ranks. Humanity had gone from surviving to winning, but war was never just about weapons. It was about control. And if the Dominion was truly afraid of something, that meant something worse was on the horizon. Deep within the Dominion's fractured territory, Warlord Krythos of the XL Kern stood before an ancient construct, its surface pulsing with faint, unreadable glyphs. The chamber had been sealed for thousands of years, locked beneath layers of rock and forgotten by time until now. Krythos had not called for reinforcements. Not yet. He didn't trust the others. Dominion leaders were turning on one another, scrambling to preserve what they could of their empires. But Krythos had always been patient. He understood that power came not from numbers, but from knowledge. The construct's interface hummed as his engineers worked, struggling to decipher the language. Frustration gnawed at him. They had extracted a few phrases, warnings, references to an ancient war, but the true nature of the machine remained a mystery. Then, without warning, the glyphs flared to life. A deep, resonant voice filled the chamber. Not spoken. Projected, as if whispered into his very mind. Recognition, fragmented. Species, unknown. Directive, unfulfilled. The warlord took a step forward, his pulse quickening. What are you? For a moment, there was silence. Then the response came, colder this time. You do not belong. The construct's energy surged, and the Dominion's systems flickered. Across the sector, ancient signals pulsed outward, their reach extending beyond Dominion-controlled space. And in the darkness between the stars, something responded. On Earth, within the hidden command centers buried deep beneath the planet's surface, Director Evelyn Rise of the Aegis Initiative studied the intercepted data with grim focus. Humanity's push against the Dominion had been a calculated risk, one they had been prepared to take. But this was different. Dr. Isaac Maury, her lead researcher, stepped beside her. The signal isn't just activating old Dominion relics, he said. It's interacting with something else. Something dormant. We've been tracking faint anomalous energy readings for months, but they never made sense until now. Evelyn turned, her gaze sharp. You're saying this wasn't just an accident? That whatever's out there has been watching? Maury hesitated before nodding. Yes, and it's waking up. A silence settled between them. Evelyn had spent her life preparing for known threats. The Dominion, the Council, rogue AI black market warlords. But this was the unknown. And humanity had a bad habit of running toward things it didn't fully understand. She straightened. Get me Admiral Varen. If there's something else at play, I want our fleets prepared before the Dominion figures out what they've unleashed. Maury hesitated. There's one more thing. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. We detected a separate transmission buried within the Dominion signal, he said. It wasn't coming from them. It was responding to them. He exhaled. The message was in our language. Evelyn's breath caught for half a second. What did it say? Maury swallowed hard. We were never your enemy. But now, you've left us no choice. Evelyn's grip tightened. The war wasn't just escalating. It was changing. And humanity wasn't the only force rewriting the rules. The fleet burned toward the outer rim, engines running hot, weapons primed. Humanity had spent decades preparing for war, but this was something else entirely. Admiral Varen stood at the holotable, watching the data feed cycle through incoming reports. The Dominion was still in disarray, fighting among itself, but the real threat was out there unseen, unknown. And it was coming. The intercepted message still echoed in his mind. We were never your enemy. But now, you've left us no choice. It didn't make sense. Humanity had spent years clawing its way through Dominion space, outmaneuvering, outgunning, outlasting their oppressors. Who else could be watching from the shadows? Who had the power to answer the Dominion's desperate calls? A transmission came through coded, urgent, It was director Evelyn Rise. Her face appeared on screen, tight with controlled tension. Varen, we have confirmation. Whatever the Dominion stirred up, it's not just some forgotten relic. We've got energy spikes across multiple sectors. Patterns suggest movement, not just activation. Something woke up. Varen clenched his jaw. Are they moving toward us? Evelyn exhaled. We don't know yet. But we do know this: whoever they aren't running. And the Dominion is terrified of them. Before Varen could respond, the deck shuddered. Klaxons blared. Officers scrambled as warning lights flickered across the bridge. Admiral! One of the tacticians shouted. New contacts, 14 signatures, just appeared out of nowhere. Reading massive energy outputs. Varen turned to the viewport, and for a moment, everything stopped. They weren't Dominion ships. The vessels were unlike anything humanity had encountered before: monolithic, silent, built from dark, shifting alloys that seemed to drink in the light. They weren't attacking. Not yet. But their presence alone sent a clear message: this war just changed. Commander Hale's voice was tight with urgency. No hails, no movement. Just waiting. Varen inhaled sharply. Prepare firing solutions, but hold. I want every ship on high alert. No sudden moves. Silence stretched across the bridge. The alien fleet hovered at the edge of sensor range, their formation perfect, unshaken by the presence of humanity's forces. Then, without warning, a signal cracked through the interference. A voice, distorted but undeniably deliberate. Humanity, you have broken the cycle. You are not meant to exist here. Varen felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He had heard enough threats to know when one carried true intent. Evelyn's voice came through the link, sharp. Do not engage. We don't know what they're capable of. A pause. Then another transmission. The Dominion called for salvation. But they did not understand what they summoned. Varen's grip tightened. Identify yourselves. For a moment, nothing. Then the fleet moved. It wasn't an attack, it was a demonstration. In an instant, the nearest Dominion-controlled outpost, one that had withstood centuries of war, vanished. No explosion, no debris. Just gone. The black ship's sensors struggled to process what had happened. One moment it was there, the next erased from existence. Panic rippled through the human fleet. Admiral, what the hell was that? Hale's voice was tight with barely restrained fear. Varen forced his mind to steady. We hold formation. We do not break. Another message, this time more direct. You will leave. Or you will be unmade. This wasn't war. This was something worse. The bridge was silent, waiting for his command. Every instinct screamed at him to act, to strike first, to find some way to fight back. But deep down, he knew this enemy wasn't here for conquest. It was here for judgment. And humanity had just been put on trial. Varen stared at the empty void where the Dominion outpost had been, the cold reality sinking in. This was no ordinary war. It was an extermination. And humanity was next. A dozen calculations ran through his mind. The alien fleet hadn't fired traditional weapons, hadn't launched missiles or beams. The outpost had simply ceased to be. No debris. No radiation spike. No trace it had ever existed. Evelyn's voice broke the silence, tight with barely controlled tension. Varen, listen carefully. This isn't just some unknown force. We've seen traces of this technology before: fragments, encrypted files buried deep in ancient pre-expansion archives. They match patterns from Earth's old war. Varen's pulse spiked. What war? A hesitation. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, Evelyn said, the one that wiped out the first human civilization. A cold chill crawled down Varen's spine. It didn't make sense. Humanity's history, its expansion into space, had been built on the foundations of struggle and survival. But if Evelyn was right, if there had been another human empire before this one, then everything they knew was a lie. and whatever had destroyed them was now standing in their path. Before he could process it, another alarm flared to life. New contact. A lieutenant called out. One vessel, inbound at impossible speed. Varen turned to the viewport, expecting another enemy ship. But what he saw sent a shockwave through the bridge. It was human. Or at least, it looked human. The ship was ancient, its hull covered in deep, unreadable etchings, its design unlike anything in the fleet. It moved with a precision that defied logic, bending space around it in ways no known drive system could. As it decelerated, an encrypted signal pulsed across all frequencies, bypassing their firewalls as if they didn't exist. Then a voice came through. Low, measured, and unmistakably human. You were never supposed to find them. Varen's breath caught in his throat. Identify yourself. A pause. Then the voice replied, calm and absolute. We are the architects. And you have awakened something that should have stayed buried. For the first time in his life, Varen felt true fear. Varen barely had time to process the words before the ship moved. Not moved, vanished. One moment it was there, the next it had slipped through space in a way that defied every known law of physics. A blink, a shift, and suddenly it was between the fleet and the encroaching enemy. The Dominion ships, massive and overwhelming in number, hesitated for the first time. Then the architects spoke again, their voice echoing through every channel, every frequency. This war was never meant to be yours. The void trembled. A ripple of energy spread outward from the ancient vessel, warping space like an invisible tidal wave. Dominion ships shuddered, their shields flickering erratically, their formation breaking as if some unseen force had ripped apart their cohesion. Evelyn was already working furiously, trying to decipher the energy readings. This isn't a weapon, she murmured. It's a command signal. Varen clenched his fists. What do you mean? Her face was pale. They're rewriting the rules of the battlefield itself. But the Dominion weren't defeated yet. The largest of their dreadnoughts surged forward, adjusting to the new physics, realigning its weapons. A single pulse of energy lanced outward, aimed directly at the architect's ship. For a split second, Varen thought nothing had happened. Then space folded. The energy blast never reached its target. It was simply gone. And then, impossibly, it reappeared. Not in empty space. Not dissipated. It struck the Dominion's own fleet. A dozen warships detonated instantly, ripped apart by their own redirected fire. Panic rippled through the enemy formation. Even the Dominion, with all their arrogance and overwhelming force, hadn't been prepared for this. Varen saw the opportunity and seized it. All ships advance. Now! The human fleet surged forward. The battle turned in an instant, not just because of the architects, but because humans adapted. They saw what was happening, adjusted their tactics, and pressed every advantage. II battle coordinators predicted movement before it happened. Drone swarms slipped through gaps and shattered formations. Pilots manually adjusted course mid-flight, threading their ships through the chaotic battlefield with impossible precision. This was what made humans dangerous. Not just their weapons, not just their technology, but their ability to turn any situation, no matter how impossible, into something they could fight their way out of. The Dominion realized too late. Their warships, their overwhelming numbers, their centuries of conquest, it all crumbled before the sheer, unrelenting defiance of a species that refused to die. And then, as the battle reached its breaking point, a final transmission cut through the chaos. Not from the Dominion, not from the architects, from Earth itself. A voice, old and steady. We see you. Varen's blood ran cold. Because whoever had just spoken wasn't part of their fleet. And they had been waiting for this moment. The battlefield was silent. Not because the war was over, but because something far older than both humanity and the Dominion had finally revealed itself. The voice from Earth had spoken only 3 words, but they carried the weight of something watching something that had been waiting in the dark for longer than anyone had known. Varen's fleet held position, their weapons still hot, their losses mounting. The Dominion had been shattered, their formations broken, their warships drifting as wreckage. But victory didn't feel like victory. The Architect's ship remained untouched, hovering between the two forces like a judge at the end of a trial. The ripple in space had faded. The battle's momentum had collapsed into eerie stillness. And then, the message came again, clearer now, as if something had changed in the void itself. Humanity was never alone. A flash of light erupted from Earth's surface. No weapon. No attack. But a signal, a reply that had been waiting for its moment. A silent message that had been buried, encoded, hidden beneath the ruins of history itself. And Varen understood, as did Evelyn, as did every soldier and pilot holding their breath in that moment. Earth had not been the starting point of this war. It had been the final stronghold. The Architects did not move. They did not speak again. Instead, their ship rotated slowly, turning toward the heart of Dominion space. And without a sound, without a single threat, it vanished. Not into hyperspace. Not into warp. It simply ceased to be there. The Dominion did not chase. They did not speak. They had seen what humanity was willing to become, what they had been meant to become, and they finally understood the cost of pushing them too far. Varen exhaled. All ships stand down. The war wasn't over. The wounds would take generations to heal. But the Dominion would never return, not the way they had before. Because something had changed, something deep in the way the galaxy worked, and every species that had ever doubted humanity now had a reason to fear them. As the fleet turned back toward Earth, toward the homeworld that had always carried its secrets, Varen looked at the planet below. It had survived against impossible odds. It had waited for this moment. And for the first time in centuries, humanity was no longer on the defensive. They were the storm on the horizon,